The violinist hadn't even finished the opening note when my husband pulled the microphone from the MC and said the words that split the room like thunder. "This marriage is over," Jordan announced, tucks crisp, smile sharp. "I'm upgrading." Gasps chased one another across the ballroom. We were in the Indigo Hall at the Magnolia Grand in downtown Atlanta, our 10th anniversary celebration. High arches, bronze lanterns, Ankara print table runners beside crystal flutes. Friends flew in from Lagos and Accra. Cousins drove up from Savannah. I had sown my geel with my Auntie Ruth earlier, laughing about how love needs steady hands. Now, people stared at me the way folks stare at a car wreck, part horror, part curiosity. A woman in a champagne dress glided from the crowd and hooked her arm through Jordan's. Sienna Banks. She owned 3 boutique gyms, had 30,000 followers, and a smirk that told me she thought that number was too small for her ambition. She raised her glass with lazy confidence. "Jordan, baby, they're in shock because they don't understand growth," she purred into the microphone as if she paid rent there. "He deserves someone who matches his level." Wine choked in someone's throat. My Auntie Ruth's gold bangles clicked like teeth. I stood very still. My dress, white silk with hand-embroidered gold palm leaves, suddenly felt like a costume borrowed from a braver woman. Jordan didn't look at me. He let the room drink him in, let the photographer's flash paint him heroic. "Maya," he said at last, turning as if I were a stubborn spreadsheet, "you've been comfortable. But comfort isn't wealth. I'm tired of carrying your dead weight. I'm done." Laughter bubbled from Sienna's lip like soda fizz. "Let's be honest," she said, eyes sliding over me. "There's rich and there's rich. Some of us live in penthouses. Some of us watch from the bus window." A hush pressed on my chest. I heard the drummer from the Afro-Fuse band drop a stick. I heard glass clink somewhere far away, as if down a well. And I heard, as if from yesterday, my grandmother's voice from her courtyard in Obuasi, Ghana. "When a masquerade dances, child, the dust rises first. Air clears later." The MC tried to coax the microphone back. Jordan ignored him. He wanted the whole theater. The lights, the gasp, the humiliation. He was a city boy who loved a big stage. He cleared his throat. "We'll keep it classy," he said, while doing the opposite. "Maya and I will sign the separation papers this week. I'll be moving out tonight. She's welcome to keep the cozy little bungalow she likes. Sienna and I are closing on a Buckhead penthouse anyway." Murmurs. Someone whispered, "He's announcing divorce at an anniversary?" Another voice answered, "This is wickedness." My cousin Kofi took a step toward the stage, anger stiffening his shoulders, but I raised a hand. He froze, fists tight. I didn't want a fight. Not this kind. I reached for my clutch. My fingers were steady. The latch clicked like a tiny door. Inside lay a velvet pouch, heavy, quiet, solid as old secrets. My palm recognized its weight better than it recognized wedding rings. Jordan was still talking. "I'm not the villain, okay? I just believe in vision. Sienna and I—" Vision was his favorite word. Vision had bought matching watches we couldn't afford and a leased Maserati that preferred the shop to the road. Vision had also brought Instagram gurus into our living room on the TV at 2 a.m., telling him to manifest bigger and leave behind anything that didn't look rich enough in photos. I looked at Sienna. She met my gaze with the glow of someone who thought she'd won a trophy. I thought about the night I babysat her niece while she ran to a quick meeting with Jordan. She returned smelling like his cologne. I knew then. I also knew patience is a blade if you learn how to hold it. The MC finally tugged the microphone free and blurted into it, voice shaking. Let's take a small break, please. Everyone, food is coming shortly. Our jollof and honey-glazed salmon are—" People didn't move. They were waiting for my collapse. I didn't faint. I didn't cry. I took the velvet pouch from my clutch and held it behind my back. The pouch held a stone, older than all our loud talk. A fist-sized chunk of ore cut from a rock face under a Ghanaian sun, flecked with something that caught light like a rumour, visible gold. The first time I saw it, I was 12, knees dusty, hair in beads that clicked when I nodded. My grandmother had pressed it into my hand and said, "Men respect noise. Gold respects quiet." I asked what it was. She smiled. A promise. When my mother died, when my grandmother grew slow, when fields in Obuasi changed hands like playing cards and the old concessions felt like sleeping lions, that promise grew teeth. While Jordan chased vision, I flew to Ghana 3 times a year, quietly. I signed papers in rooms with ceiling fans, drank malt with surveyors, paid for a hydrologist's report that smelled like rivers and math. I learned the patience of machines eating mountains. I learned the taste of dust that turns, one day, into bullion. Still, gold respects quiet. This was not the night to talk about it. This was the night to watch a masquerade dance and take note of the dust pattern. Let them finish their performance. Let every eye see who they chose to be in the moment they thought I had nothing. Sienna's laugh rose, thin and bright. "It's okay, Maya," she said, tossing me a pity I didn't order. "We all know not everyone can keep up. You're sweet. You'll find a nice teacher or something. You'll be fine." From somewhere near the cake table, Auntie Ruth hissed, "Teacher is honorable. Oh." Then she covered her mouth, embarrassed. Jordan finally glanced at the pouch, curious. "Is that your lunch money, Maya?" he asked, chewing the syllables to show he still had bite. "Planning to tip the valet with nickels?" I looked at him, really looked. I saw the fatigue beneath his eyes he buried under expensive concealer, the twitch in his jaw that betrayed the stress of living a lie with style. I remembered the boy who once rode the martyr with me to the farmer's market, splitting one peach, sticky fingers laughing. I also remembered the man who asked for my grandmother's beads to decorate our mantel and then hid my mother's framed photo in the hall closet because it throws off the vibe. "Jordan," I said softly, "are you certain you want to end our marriage tonight?" He spread his arms, bathing in attention. "I'm certain about my future." "Then we're agreed," I said. A small shiver passed through the room. People shifted. They had expected me to beg, or to rant, to throw a drink like in a show. I stood with my grandmother's oar in my palm and felt a river moving under the floorboards. The band leader, desperate, struck a hopeful chord. It hung lonely. A young waiter, nervous, eyes wide, approached the stage carrying a slim metal case, the kind you might see a DJ carry, the kind that says, "Whatever is inside matters." He checked a card, then checked me. "Mrs. Cole, delivery for you." Sienna's nose crinkled. "During an event?" She looked at Jordan. "Who even sends mail like that to a party?" The waiter nodded, apologizing with his whole body. "Courier said it was time-sensitive, ma'am, had to be hand-delivered. He said, 'Place it in Mrs. Maya Cole's hands only.'" He made me repeat it. Time slowed. The MC said, "Perhaps later." But curiosity had already climbed onto the table and started dancing. Eyes followed the case as if it were a living thing. The waiter placed it in my hands. Cold. He offered a pen to sign a receipt. I signed. "Thank you," I said. My voice did not wobble. Jordan laughed. "Is that your alimony starter kit? Coupons?" "Maybe it's a GoFundMe," Sienna added. People who'd once worked with her at the gym shifted away from her, like chairs edging from a leaking ceiling. I snapped open the latches. The sound, clean metal, cut through the whispering. Inside, a single folder lay on blue foam. On the tab, Ajani Ridge Gold, Q2 royalty statement. Beneath that, Minerals Commission of Ghana, compliance certification, renewals approved. A stamped seal glowed red like a coal. Kofi inhaled so sharply, I thought he might swallow air wrong. He knew the name Ajani from our late-night phone calls, where I used codes like the farm and our old mango tree. He knew I'd been quiet for a reason. Sienna lost a degree of color, but recovered quickly. Smile pasted back on. Royalty? For what? An Instagram page? Jordan leaned in. He could smell money even when he couldn't see it. "What is this?" His voice dropped, just a hair. I lifted my eyes. Around me, faces fell into silence, as if all the mouths in the room agreed to be soft at once. The velvet pouch in my other hand felt suddenly heavier, not with stone, but with choice. Years had led to this minute. The tunnels, The blasting schedule that scared me until it didn't. The quarterly call where an engineer named Kojo said, "We are into a new vein, madam. The grade is surprising." The silence I kept while my husband measured love in square footage and bottle service. I closed the case gently. I looked at the cake we'd ordered together, white buttercream with edible gold leaf, 10 years piped in a script that now felt like a small lie. I looked at the DJ who had our first dance song queued up, the one we wouldn't use tonight. I looked at the guests who would go home and tell this story for years, their versions different but overlapping like shadows at noon. "Jordan," I said, voice low even. "You asked if I was certain. I am, but I want you to be certain too." "Certain of what?" he snapped, guard up now that cameras weren't loving him back. "Certain you're finished," I said. "Because once some things are said, they can't fit back in your mouth, and once some doors close, they don't have handles on the outside." He tried a smirk and failed. "Stop speaking in riddles." "It's a folktale thing," I said, and a few aunties snorted. He rolled his eyes. "Enough drama. I'm leaving tonight." He took Sienna's hand. She squeezed his fingers, eyes bright as a child sneaking sweets. He turned to step down from the stage. The ballroom doors swung open. A woman in a navy suit with the neat focus of a surgeon walked in, flanked by 2 men carrying a short metal tube the size of a carry-on. The woman scanned the room, then came straight to me. She greeted Auntie Ruth with a quick bow of the head that said respect. Then she pressed a business card into my palm. "Mint State Bullion, Private Client Services." On the line beneath, "Appointment confirmed, assay verification." Jordan paused at the stairs. The woman spoke quietly, just to me. "We can finish this in the lounge if you prefer, Mrs. Cole. The refinery sent the first batch. Today's spot price makes the delivery significant. Also, the wire confirmation for last quarter cleared. Your transfer letter is in your case." A silence fell so total even the chiller hum seemed to step outside. I felt the entire room tilt towards us, as if gravity had opinions. Sienna's smile flickered like a candle in wind. "What delivery?" she asked, rehearsed calm fraying. I touched the velvet pouch. My grandmother's oar felt suddenly like a key I'd carried for half my life, finally at the right door. "Jordan," I said, eyes on him now, "before you go anywhere with anyone, you should hear one sentence, just one." He swallowed. His tucks seemed to shrink around him. I took a breath. The bandleader's hand hovered over his keys, unsure whether to play us out or wait for a song no one knew. Auntie Ruth's bangles held still. Kofi's jaw worked, but he held his place. I slid the minerals commission letter from the folder, the seal unbroken, the ink still cold. Then, with the entire hall holding its breath and my husband halfway down the stairs, I lifted the envelope to the microphone and said, "This is the moment you learn what you never bothered to ask." The red seal waited under my thumb, soft wax ready to give. I pressed. I did not break the seal. Not yet. The wax softened under my thumb like ripe fruit, but I let it cool again. A folktale grandmother would say, "Before you swallow, smell the soup." I lifted my head and the crowd blurred, becoming sound and color. 10 years is a long time to study a person's eyes. Jordan's were wide, bright with curiosity and fear, performing chess in a hurry. The letter waited. The case waited. The woman in the navy suit waited with that stillness of professionals who touch heavy numbers for a living. I took a breath, and the ballroom dissolved into the courtyard of my grandmother's house in Obuasi. It was harmattan season then. The air felt like it had powdered itself. I was 12, an American kid who spent every other summer with a woman who measured time in seasons and parables. Grandma Afua wore a blue wrapper with white birds stitched along the hem. She tucked a piece of rock into my palm and closed my fingers around it. "Don't squeeze," she warned. "Hold it as if it were alive." "It's just a rock," I said. She smiled. "Rocks have stories. Gold has secrets. Men talk. Earth listens." When we hiked that afternoon, we passed hills that looked asleep. My grandmother pointed at a rust-red gash in a slope where rain had chewed the earth. "There," she said. That vein is like a river underground. Your great-grandfather called this place Ajani Ridge. He said the ridge remembers. I was a city child who loved mangoes and didn't understand why clay smelled like rain. But I understood the hush in my grandmother's voice and the way old men paused when she walked by. Some people don't have money, they have gravity. Years later, when I met Jordan at a street festival in Atlanta, he had the opposite of hush. He was 23, handsome like a billboard, selling a new marketing hustle to anyone who would stop. He had that flipping words, glitter slogan charm. I'm going to build something, he told me that first month, leaning back on a martyr bench as if it were a throne in progress. I just need the right partner. He meant a partner who clapped while he climbed. I had just finished my accounting degree at Georgia State and was working the early shift at a hospital billing office by day, handling books for a little West African grocery by night. Numbers were my way of eavesdropping on truth. They didn't always sing, but they didn't lie. Jordan said he loved that about me, the calm money brain. He said it when the rent was due, and again when a photo shoot had gone long and a check was late, and again when a vision meeting took our grocery budget hostage. We got married at a small church with a choir that made old wood shake. Aunties tied my jail tight enough to keep my head steady. Grandma Efua sent a prayer on paper and a short sentence on the bottom. Remember, Ajani, quiet water runs deep. Jordan and I were good for a time. There was laughter, and weekends in Piedmont Park, and mornings we shared one plantain, and remembered our hunger like a friend who made us humble. But a certain kind of hunger grows teeth when it stares at other people's plates. He wanted, no, needed, any room to know he was the most interesting person in it. The first time I flew back to Ghana after our marriage, I told Jordan I was taking Auntie Ruth to visit her sister in Kumasi. He kissed my forehead and asked me to bring home something cool and antique for the coffee table, nothing that looks too village. I smiled and said, okay. I brought back a woven basket that he thought clashed with our aesthetic and put in a closet. I also brought back a file folder I didn't show him. I met a lawyer named Mensa in a small office with a slow ceiling fan and walls crowded with framed permits. He spoke plain and careful, like a man measuring flour. We will do this clean, he said. No shortcuts with Minerals Commission, no quarrel with chiefs. Family land is history, we will respect it. We formed Ajani Ridge Gold as a Ghanaian company, with a joint venture operator who knew how to make machines eat stone. I set up a U.S. holding trust in my mother's maiden name, with Auntie Ruth as co-trustee. I took early calls from a metallurgist who talked about grade like a person talks about love. Quiet, excited, a little protective. Kojo sent me drone photos of hills waking up to roads. When he said, we are into ore, I pretended I didn't hear the way he didn't shout. We signed off-take agreements with a refinery I'd researched for 2 years. I came home with red dust in my suitcase. I came home with a new way of standing. Jordan noticed the dust and asked why my hair smelled like smoke. He did not notice the way I checked the courier app at 3 a.m. He did not notice that the auntie's funeral trips always lined up with quarterly board meetings that happened in rooms where people didn't perform wealth. They performed patience. I didn't tell him because some men don't hear a quiet, I'm building. They only hear a loud, I have built. And if you tell them too early, they'll try to move your foundation to fit their selfie. When Sienna floated into our lives, she did it like a fragrance that looks innocent on the bottle and violent in the room. She met Jordan at her gym's Founders Fitness mixer. She had an athlete's stride and a shark's eyes. She believed in brands the way my grandmother believed in proverbs. She told me once, handing me lemon water, you have nice eyes. You should try lash extensions. The camera loves it. I tried to like her. I failed. I watched Jordan grow taller around her. I watched our arguments go from 2 people throwing words to 1 person shielding a spark from a storm, while the other practiced speeches about abundance. Baby, he said one night, tapping his phone, eyes glittering at a condo listing. Sometimes you have to leave the old you to meet the rich you. Sometimes you have to finish paying the car you own before you buy the one with butterfly doors, I said. He scoffed. Scarcity mindset. I learned to measure silence. I learned how not to show a hand until the river reached the bridge. When Kojo called me 3 quarters ago and said, "Madam, this vein, if it holds, your royalty stream will not be small." I took a long walk around our neighborhood. A little girl jumped rope on the sidewalk, counting in twi. I felt my grandmother walking beside me. I whispered, "We'll keep it quiet." She didn't answer, but a wind shifted the leaves like a nod. I flew back to Ghana and sat under a neem tree with the chief of a neighboring stool. We ate ground nuts and talked about a school. I drafted a covenant for the Ajani Community Fund that would receive a fixed percentage of royalties before any disbursement to me. Auntie Ruth insisted that clause be bold. "A tree grows taller when its roots drink first," she said. I added another clause, the marital opt-out on counsel's advice, not because I planned to leave Jordan, but because any lawyer who has watched people change around money tells you to write medicine before the sickness. 6 months ago on a Friday, when the Maserati leaked something that made the driveway shine, Jordan asked me to co-sign a refinance and debt consolidation. He wanted to tidy our credit so a Buckhead mortgage would smile upon him. I read the packet. I added a clean post-nuptial acknowledgement at the back with a plain cover page, confirmation of separate property, family mineral interests. He signed the stack watching a podcast. His pen didn't pause at the plain page. People rarely pause at plain pages. I didn't feel triumphant, I felt sad. I baked him banana bread that night. He said it needed more sugar. 2 weeks ago, the refinery sent word that the first bullion from Ajani's new vein had cleared assay. Mint State Bullion asked when I preferred delivery and verification. I asked them, "Can you do Saturday, September 6th? The woman on the phone said, "Yes, Mrs. Cole, mid-evening." I looked at our calendar. I looked at the Magnolia Grand booking. I let the wind blow the pages of a book I'd been reading and land where they liked. I thought, for a hopeful minute, that maybe Jordan would dance with me that night. Maybe he would remember the peach at the farmer's market and the martyr bench and forgive the size of our cozy kitchen. Maybe he would let a small room hold a big love. He did not. He rehearsed a speech with a new leading lady and chose the biggest room he could afford. He wanted to be a movie. I let him choose his genre. I chose my truth. Now, back in the Indigo Hall, the letter with the red seal sat in my hand, heavy with all the mornings I had counted quietly. The woman in navy watched me with sober kindness. The metal tube by her aide's feet held something that weighs more than noise. I set the velvet pouch on the podium, next to the case. I lifted the microphone. "Some of you know my grandmother," I said. Heads nodded. She told me a story when I was small. She said a man once threw out a stool because it looked plain. He didn't know gold had been hammered inside it. He dragged a glitter chair into his house, and it broke on his first sitting. He landed on the floor. The plain stool stayed plain and strong. A ripple of laughter, thin and grateful, moved through the room like water finding its path. I touched the seal again. Wax yields. Truth doesn't. I pressed, and this time I let it break. The envelope opened with a sigh. I slid out the contents and placed them in a neat fan on the podium. The top one bore the Minerals Commission crest and words that made Auntie Ruth clap without sound. Renewals approved, large-scale mining lease, Ajani Ridge Gold. The next carried an embossed logo and numbers that made the room lean forward unconsciously. Quarterly royalty statement, use $86,520,000, to be disbursed per schedule. The one beneath that was what Kojo had promised in his soft, proud voice. Assay confirmed, or purity as stated, delivery schedule attached. Sienna stared as if paper could bite. "This is a prank," she said too high. Jordan's face tried on 3 expressions and settled on board. "Baby, you could have printed those off Canva." I smiled. "Then your pen did a beautiful job signing Canva." His eyes flicked to the last document in my hand. Plain paper, plain title. The same one he'd skimmed with a podcast playing in his ear. "Confirmation of separate property. Family mineral interests," I read. "Acknowledged and signed by spouse, March 11th. I lifted it up. A signature curved across the bottom in expensive ink. Jordan blinked. His mouth opened. His body took a half-step backward, as if the stage tilted under only his feet. "Jordan Cole," I said, and I kept my voice gentle, because you can be kind and still be a door closing. Before you walk out of this marriage tonight, I want to be certain you understand what you signed 6 months ago." I turned the page toward the lights so those in the front rows could see. People leaned in. Phones stilled. Sienna's fingers slackened on his arm. Jordan squinted. Then he squinted again as if a different angle would change the letters. The color that had come to his cheeks when he announced his upgrade drained, slow as a desert river. "That's not—" he started, stopped, swallowed. You tricked me." Auntie Ruth's bangles clicked once. Kofi let out a breath like a whistle. "I asked you to read," I said, still gentle. "You told me you trusted me." He grabbed for bluster and found it hollow. "I'm not bound by some homely paperwork." The woman in navy cleared her throat, professional, precise. "If I may," she said to me, and then to the room. "Our firm only releases to the titled account holder and designated trustees. There is no spousal access attached to these mineral interests, per the notarized acknowledgement which we have on file." She held up a copy. Jordan's signature looked very much like his signature. The room did a strange thing then. It breathed, not a gasp. A slow exhale like relief and shock had agreed to share a chair. Sienna recovered first, spine sugar stiff. "It doesn't matter," she said, too bright. "Jordan doesn't need your dusty rock money. We have our own moves, we have investors." She looked at him for confirmation and found none. He was staring at his name on the line where he'd put it, baffled that ink could be so loyal. I slid one more paper free from the folder. I hadn't meant to use it tonight. I had planned to file it Monday morning when I had sunlight and tea and a clear desk. But nights have their own timing. "This," I said quietly, "is a notice of separation I asked my attorney to hold until I told him otherwise." Whispers ticked like rain on a roof. Jordan's eyes snapped to mine, pleading and proud, warring inside. I lifted the pen the waiter had given me with the courier receipt. I set the tip to the line, and just as the ballpoint kissed the paper, the ballroom doors flew open a second time, and a uniformed sheriff stepped inside, hat in hand, flanked by a clerk with a red envelope. He looked over the gathered faces, found Jordan, and said in a voice that carried to the back tables, "Mr. Cole, you've been served." The sheriff's boots echoed against the marble floor as he strode forward, his hat held respectfully under one arm. He wasn't rushed, but he wasn't slow either. Just steady, like a man who had walked into many rooms and handed over bad news wrapped in good paper. Behind him, the clerk carried the red envelope high enough for all to see. It had a wax seal of its own, though this one bore the mark of the county court. Jordan's bravado slipped another notch. He let go of Sienna's hand without meaning to. The hush that fell on the room wasn't the silence of awe this time. It was the silence of a community waiting for the fall of a drumbeat, a silence that smelled of judgment, thick and unavoidable. The sheriff stopped at the bottom of the stage and cleared his throat. "Mr. Jordan Cole?" Jordan swallowed, forcing a smirk back onto his lips. "What is this? Some mistake? I don't know what circus you're running here, Maya, but—" "It's not a circus, sir," the sheriff interrupted. His voice was calm, with the weight of someone who carried authority not by volume but by law. He lifted the envelope, glanced at the clerk, and then back at Jordan. "These are court documents. You've officially been served." The words dropped like stones in water. Ripples spread across the ballroom. Guests leaned toward one another, whispering in disbelief. Auntie Ruth clutched her Jill tighter, her mouth set in a line. Kofi muttered under his breath, "Nemesis doesn't knock. It kicks the door." Jordan snatched the envelope, tearing at the seal with trembling fingers. His eyes darted across the first page, then the second. His lips moved as if reading words he didn't want to say aloud. The color drained from his cheeks, and sweat beaded along his hairline. "What is it, Jordan?" Sienna asked, her voice shrill now. She tried to peek over his shoulder, but he angled the papers away from her. "Tell them, say it's nothing." But his voice failed him. The sheriff, still standing firm, supplied the answer in his measured tone. "Mr. Cole, you're being sued for fraudulent misrepresentation in connection with several failed investor partnerships. 3 plaintiffs have filed jointly. The papers also note outstanding debts exceeding $200,000, with liens pending on assets registered in your name." The room gasped again, louder this time, sharp like a sudden clap of thunder. Jordan staggered back a step. That's not possible. My lawyer—" "Sir," the sheriff said, "the documents speak for themselves." He tipped his hat politely to me, then to Auntie Ruth, and turned to leave with his clerk. Duty discharged. The door closed behind them. The music hadn't dared to return. The ballroom air felt electric, as though lightning had struck, and everyone was waiting to see if the roof would hold. I stayed still, microphone in hand, watching Jordan flounder. This was not the moment for triumph. It was the moment for truth. "You disgraced me tonight," I said quietly, though every corner of the hall heard me. "You thought I had nothing. You thought comfort was weakness. You thought wealth was measured by the glitter on someone's dress or the square footage of a penthouse." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His fingers crumpled the court papers, his chest rising and falling in panic. "But Jordan," I continued, my voice steadier now, "wealth is measured by roots, by patience, by integrity. My grandmother taught me that. You mocked it. And now the roots of your choices are showing." The room hummed with murmurs of agreement. Some nodded. Some shook their heads, astonished at how far the masquerade had fallen. Sienna stepped away from Jordan, her face twisted. "You didn't tell me about this," she hissed. "You said you were clean. You said we were building." He tried to reach for her, but she recoiled as though his hand burned. "Don't touch me," she snapped. "I don't share a spotlight with lawsuits." And just like that, the mistress who had laughed at my supposed smallness walked away, her champagne dress glimmering under the lights as she disappeared into the crowd. Jordan stumbled forward, clutching the crumpled papers. "Maya," he begged now, the swagger stripped clean. "Listen, baby. This isn't what it looks like. They've got it wrong. I can fix this. We can fix this together. Don't let them think. Don't let them laugh at me like this." I studied him for a long moment. 10 years of history sat heavy between us, the laughter, the hunger, the betrayals. 10 years balanced on this stage, in this ballroom. I leaned closer to the microphone. My voice was soft, but it cut through the silence like a blade. "You were worried about them laughing at you, Jordan, but tonight the only thing people will remember is how you laughed at me." I stepped back, my hand still resting on the folder of goldmine documents. His knees buckled slightly, and he sank onto the edge of the stage, head in his hands. The guests stirred, whispers rising again, but louder this time. Some pitied him, others shook their heads at his arrogance. Auntie Ruth lifted her chin and declared in a voice that carried, "The one who mocks another's harvest may starve when his own field fails." The bandleader, unsure, tapped a hesitant note, but the moment was too thick for music. Jordan lifted his head, eyes wild. "Maya," he croaked, "don't do this, please." And just as his plea cracked the air, the woman in the navy suit stepped forward again, the metal tube still waiting at her feet. She inclined her head toward me. "Mrs. Cole," she said, "shall we proceed with the verification of your first gold delivery?" The room erupted with gasps, all eyes snapping back to me, and I smiled, small, steady, certain, because the story was only beginning. The ballroom seemed to shrink as every head turned toward me. The woman in the navy suit's words, "first gold delivery," hung in the air like incense no one could ignore. People leaned forward, whispering, their curiosity now blazing like a fire no one could put out. Jordan's eyes darted from me to the metal tube, to the papers in my hand and back again. "Gold," he muttered, shaking his head. This is some kind of stunt. Maya doesn't own any gold." His voice cracked on the last word. The woman in navy straightened her jacket. "Mr. Cole," she said evenly, "Mint State Bullion doesn't deal in stunts. We deal in assets. Assets your wife has in verified, recorded, and insured reserves." She signaled to the two aides, who lifted the tube onto the stage with careful hands. The clank of metal against wood was louder than any drumbeat. Murmurs rippled. Auntie Ruth crossed her arms and smiled faintly, as though a prophecy had just come true. Kofi let out a low whistle that earned him a sharp nudge from the cousin beside him. Jordan stumbled closer, trying to peer into the tube. "No," he whispered, as if denial could hold back the tide. "No, this isn't real. You've been hiding things from me." I met his frantic eyes and held them. "You never asked, Jordan. You were too busy performing wealth to recognize the quiet work of it." The woman unlocked the tube and drew out a sealed bar wrapped in assay plastic, its golden gleam catching the chandelier light and splashing across the walls like morning sun. Gasps swept through the hall. Even those who had whispered doubts before now fell into stunned silence. Gold has a way of shutting mouths. "This," she announced, "is one of the first bars refined from Ajani Ridge." She handed me a printed certificate with weight, purity, and batch number. Current market value, approximately $43 million. The number struck the crowd like thunder. Sienna, who had slipped back near the door as if reconsidering her exit, froze in her tracks. Her hand shot to her mouth, eyes wide. For once, she had no smug remark ready. Jordan's knees gave out. He sank to the floor of the stage, clutching the crumpled lawsuit papers in one hand and staring at the gold bar as if it were a ghost come to mock him. His voice was broken now, desperate, hoarse. "Maya, why didn't you tell me? We could have had it all." I inhaled slowly. My grandmother's words echoed inside me. Gold respects quiet. And I realized this was the very moment she had been preparing me for. "You wanted a show, Jordan," I said, my voice calm but firm. "So I gave you one. You humiliated me to elevate yourself, thinking I was beneath you. But the truth, the wealth you were chasing, the penthouses you boasted about, the glitter you thought was everything, it was in my hands all along, not yours." The crowd erupted, some in applause, some in disbelief, some in laughter at the cruel twist, but no one could look away. Jordan reached for me, his voice cracking. "Maya, please, don't leave me like this. We can fix it. Forget what I said tonight. You're my wife." "No, Jordan," I cut in sharply. "You're the man who mocked me in front of our people while your mistress laughed. You chose to disgrace me on the very day we were meant to celebrate our vows. You don't get to rewrite the story just because the truth finally humiliated you back." Sienna, recovering her venom, sneered from the back of the room. "So what? You're rich now? You think money makes you better than us? Jordan will always be more than you." But even as she spoke, her voice trembled. She knew the room no longer believed her. The spotlight had shifted. The woman in navy packed the gold bar back into its tube and handed me the signed verification. "Everything is in order, Mrs. Cole. Would you like to proceed with the transfer instructions tonight?" I nodded once, steady. "Yes. But after this, after I finish what must be finished." The guests leaned forward, sensing another storm was about to break. Jordan's voice cracked again. "Maya, please, don't end us here. Don't throw away 10 years like this." I turned to him slowly, my face unreadable. "You already threw it away, Jordan. You just didn't know the cost." The room fell silent again, the air heavy with anticipation. People knew a decision was coming, something that would either seal his downfall completely or leave a small crack in the door of his redemption. I stepped toward him, the folder in one hand, the signed separation notice in the other. My voice was low, but it carried to every ear. "Tell me, Jordan, when you laughed at me tonight, when you called me dead weight, was that the truth of your heart, or just the performance of your pride?" His mouth opened, but no words came. The silence stretched, and then I held up the separation papers, pen poised once again. The room collectively leaned forward, waiting for my hand to move. Audience engagement prompt. If you were in my position, humiliated by your spouse in public, only to discover you had more power than they ever imagined, what would you do? Sign the papers right there in front of everyone, or walk away quietly and let him crumble on his own? Comment below and share your thoughts. And don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to know how far our stories travel. The pen hovered over the paper, trembling not from fear, but from the weight of choice. Every eye in the ballroom was glued to my hand. The chandeliers flickered as if even the lights leaned forward to witness my decision. Jordan's breathing was ragged. "Maya, wait, please, don't do this here." His voice was no longer commanding, no longer proud. It was the desperate plea of a man watching his entire world slip away. I looked at him, really looked. The man I married was still there, buried under greed and pride, but now stripped bare for everyone to see. The glitter he once wore like armor had melted off, and all that was left was a shivering man clutching crumpled lawsuits and empty promises. For a brief second, I remembered the early days, the martyr bench, the shared peach, the laughter when we had nothing. A pang tugged at me. But then the sound of Sienna's mocking laugh replayed in my mind. The sting of his words, dead weight, echoed in my ears, and the weight of the gold documents in my hand reminded me that love without respect is just a chain meant to hold you down. I lowered the pen. The tip pressed against the line. The crowd inhaled as one, but then I stopped. I raised my head, letting my gaze sweep across the room. "No," I said softly. "Not yet." The whispers exploded like sparks. Auntie Ruth tilted her head, studying me with sharp, knowing eyes. Kofi frowned in confusion. Jordan blinked, hope flickering in his face. "Maya, thank you. You're not like them. You wouldn't embarrass me like this. We can still work it out." But I shook my head. "Don't mistake my patience for weakness, Jordan. Tonight isn't about saving you. Tonight is about showing you that the things you chased, the things you mocked me for not having, they were never worth my dignity. I won't sign this paper in anger. When I sign it, it will be because I choose to, not because you pushed me there." Gasps rippled through the guests. A few clapped, quietly at first, then louder, as others joined in. My words weren't just for Jordan. They were for every woman in that room who had been dismissed, disrespected, or treated as invisible. Jordan's face twisted. He looked out at the guests clapping for me, then back at me. Rage flickered through his desperation. "So what, Maya? You think they're clapping for you because you have money now? They're only here because you embarrassed me. They'll forget you tomorrow." "Maybe," I said calmly, "but tonight they will remember you for what you really are." Sienna, who had been silent for too long, suddenly found her venom again. She pushed forward, her heels clacking loudly against the marble. "You're all fools," she spat at the crowd. "So she has a few bars of gold. What does that matter? Jordan doesn't need her. We'll build our own empire, and when we do, you'll all come crawling back begging for our help." But her words fell flat. No one clapped. No one even nodded. In fact, people turned their faces away from her, unwilling to give her venom any oxygen. The spotlight was gone, and she couldn't stand the darkness. Jordan tried to hush her, but she yanked her arm away. "Don't touch me. You lied to me, Jordan. You promised you were a king. All you've given me is shame." Her voice cracked, and she stormed toward the door, heels echoing like drumbeats of defeat. The crowd parted for her, but no one called her back. She was already a ghost. Jordan stood frozen, staring at the empty space where she had been. Then he turned back to me, tears streaming down his face now. "Maya, please, I was wrong. I see it now. You're the one who built something real. Don't leave me with nothing." I met his broken gaze and held it. Then, with deliberate calm, I folded the separation papers and slipped them back into the folder. "I'll sign them," I said, my voice low but clear. "But not tonight. Tonight isn't about you, Jordan. It's about me taking back my dignity. You can keep your shame. That's yours to carry." The crowd erupted again, some cheering, some gasping, some shaking their heads in awe. Jordan sank to his knees, his hands covering his face. His sobs echoed in the ballroom, but no one rushed to help him, not even the friends who once toasted his vision. I turned to the woman in navy who was still waiting with quiet patience. "Yes," I said, steady and unshaken. "Let's proceed with the transfer instructions." She bowed her head slightly, then gestured to her aides to follow her out. I walked with her, the case of gold documents pressed firmly against my chest. But as I reached the door, I felt the weight of dozens of eyes on me. People who had come expecting to witness a marriage celebration, but had instead witnessed a fall and a rise all in one night. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't the end of my story. It was only the beginning of something much bigger, something Jordan could never steal, and something no humiliation could erase. Because the gold was mine, the dignity was mine, and the future, whether he liked it or not, was mine too. The night air outside the Magnolia Grand was thick with whispers. Guests spilled onto the marble steps in clusters, their voices carrying fragments of the drama that had just unfolded. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others laughed nervously, as though trying to digest the spectacle. Reporters from a small local blog who had been hired to cover the high-profile anniversary were already typing furiously into their phones. I stepped into the cool air with the woman in navy and her aides, the metal tube clutched tightly by one of them. The Atlanta skyline glittered in the distance, but it couldn't outshine the weight of what had just been revealed inside. She turned to me, her voice soft but steady. "Mrs. Cole, we can finalize the transfer now or wait until Monday at your office. Given tonight's circumstances, I'd recommend we move forward immediately." I nodded. "Let's do it tonight." My voice was firm. I didn't want to give Jordan even a sliver of hope that he could meddle. We walked toward a sleek black SUV waiting by the curb. Before I could climb in, Auntie Ruth's hand caught my arm. Her eyes were sharp, her jewel tilted with pride. "You handled yourself like your grandmother's child tonight," she whispered. "You did not let anger drive your hand. That patience is worth more than the gold itself." I squeezed her hand, tears pricking my eyes for the first time that evening. "I almost signed it, Auntie." She shook her head. "Almost is not the same as done. The river that rushes too fast loses its way. The one that flows steady finds the ocean." Her words grounded me. I climbed into the SUV. The woman in navy slid beside me, opening her laptop on the console. The glow of the screen lit her face as she pulled up the disbursement dashboard. Rows of numbers filled the screen, royalty streams, spot price adjustments, wire confirmations. The digits swam before my eyes, so large they hardly looked real. "Mrs. Cole," she said, "as of this quarter, your net position stands at $712 million, excluding future deliveries. The next extraction schedule projects a 30% increase due to the newly confirmed vein. Do you wish to keep all assets in the trust, or would you like to allocate a portion for personal liquidity?" 712 million. My chest tightened. For years I had walked in silence, carrying the weight of this secret, doubting myself, fearing what exposure might bring. Now it was real in a way even I had not dared to speak aloud. "Keep it in the trust," I said firmly, "and ensure the Ajani Community Fund gets its share before anything else. My grandmother's name must always stand clean." She smiled faintly, typing swiftly. "Done." The SUV pulled away from the Magnolia Grand, leaving the noise of shocked guests and Jordan's crumbling pride behind. But just as I began to breathe, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Maya," Jordan's broken voice rasped through the line. "Don't hang up, please." I froze. For a moment, the sound of his voice carried me back to the man I had once loved, the man who made me laugh when I had nothing. But then I remembered his smirk, his insults, his mistress's mocking laugh. "You should be resting, Jordan," I said coldly. "You have lawsuits to prepare for." "This isn't about the lawsuits," he pleaded. "It's about us. I know I made mistakes. I was blind. But you can't walk away like this. We built 10 years together. Don't throw me away like trash." "You already did that to me," I replied. "On a stage with a microphone, remember?" There was silence on the line. Then his voice cracked. "Maya, if you leave me now, I'll have nothing. Nothing." I stared out the tinted window as Atlanta's lights blurred past. His words echoed in my ear. Nothing. The irony stung. He had traded dignity for glitter, loyalty for vanity, a steady love for a shallow fling. And now, standing on the ruins of his own choices, he wanted me to rescue him. "You'll have exactly what you earned," I whispered, then ended the call. The woman in navy looked at me curiously but said nothing. She only turned her laptop so I could confirm the transfer with a digital signature. I placed my finger on the screen. The transaction locked in. Final. As the SUV sped toward my hotel, I felt a strange mix of relief and heaviness. Yes, I had reclaimed my dignity. Yes, the gold was secure. But something darker lingered at the edge of my thoughts. Jordan wasn't finished. Men like him rarely accepted defeat quietly, and deep down, I knew this was not the last time our paths would clash. Because gold does not just attract wealth, it attracts envy, and envy always fights back. Back at my hotel suite, the city lights stretched across the skyline like a sea of restless fireflies. I stood at the window, arms folded, staring at my reflection in the glass. My silk gown still shimmered under the glow, but I didn't feel like the same woman who had walked into the Magnolia Grand hours earlier. On the coffee table behind me sat the folder of documents, the verification case, and a gold bar gleaming faintly in its seal. Proof, power, responsibility. But power never sleeps quietly. My phone buzzed again, this time a message. Unknown number. Enjoy your gold while you can. Enemies don't clap. They wait. My stomach tightened. I didn't reply. Instead, I locked the phone and slipped it into the drawer. Still, the words lingered. Enemies don't clap, they wait. I tried to rest, but sleep danced far from me. Images of Jordan's face, broken, pleading, furious, flashed in my mind. Then Sienna's sneer, the lawsuits, the guests' whispers, and beneath it all my grandmother's voice. Gold is like fire, child, warm when you guard it, wild when you leave it careless. By morning, the headlines were everywhere. Anniversary from hell. Businessman dumps wife publicly, gets humiliated by 700 Martyrs gold mine revelation. Atlanta woman quietly built African gold empire, while husband chased glamour. From mockery to millions, Maya Cole's stunning twist. I didn't post a word, I didn't need to. The story carried itself, fueled by shocked guests who told it in every tone, mockery, awe, respect. But Jordan? Oh, Jordan was not silent. By midday, his Instagram Live had gone viral. He sat in a half-lit apartment, the Maserati's keys tossed carelessly on the counter behind him. His face was puffy, his voice edged with bitterness. She tricked me, he spat at the camera. Signed papers I never read. Lied about where she was going. She built everything behind my back. That's not partnership, that's betrayal. And now she's acting like some queen. Without me, she'd still be counting pennies at a hospital desk. Comments scrolled faster than he could read them. Some laughed at him. Some pitied him. Many told him exactly what they thought of a man who mocked his wife on an anniversary, only to beg her back when the truth came out. But one comment stood out. It was repeated, copied, shared. He's broke, he's desperate. Desperate men do desperate things. And they were right. That evening, as I prepared to leave for a private dinner with the bullion representatives, a knock came at my door. Not the polite knock of hotel staff. This one was heavy, urgent. I opened it carefully. Jordan stood there, unshaven, eyes bloodshot. He smelled faintly of liquor. "Maya," he said hoarsely, "please, don't shut me out. We can still fix this." I didn't step aside. "You shouldn't be here." He pressed his hand against the doorframe, his voice trembling between anger and desperation. "You don't understand what's happening. They're coming after me for the lawsuits, for debts I can't pay, but you—" He jabbed a finger toward the case on my table. "You could save me. Just a small part of that fortune, and I can get back on my feet. Don't let them destroy me." I studied him in silence. The once proud man was crumbling, but something in his eyes unsettled me. It wasn't just desperation. It was calculation. "You disgraced me, Jordan," I said softly, "in front of everyone. You mocked me, mocked my dignity while holding hands with your mistress. And now, because the floor fell out from under you, you want my hand to pull you back up?" His lips trembled. "We were married, Maya. Doesn't that mean anything?" "Yes," I said, voice cold. "It means I know you too well to trust you again." I pushed the door to close, but his hand shot out, stopping it. His tone hardened. "If you walk away from me now, don't think it ends here. That gold, that mine. Do you really believe you can hold on to it without enemies circling? Without me, you'll be a target. Alone. I froze. There it was, the threat hidden inside his plea. Slowly I forced the door shut, pressing my weight until his hand slipped back. The latch clicked. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my voice stayed calm as I whispered to myself, better a target standing tall than a prisoner kneeling beside him. Through the door I heard him mutter, "You'll regret this, Maya. You'll regret leaving me with nothing." His footsteps faded down the hall. I sank onto the edge of the bed, breathing hard. For the first time since the ballroom, fear crept into my chest. Not fear of losing Jordan, but fear of what a desperate man might do when his pride has already shattered. Because he was right about one thing. Enemies don't clap, they wait. And I had just given them something worth waiting for. Days passed, but the storm Jordan left behind only grew darker. The news cycle wouldn't let go. My face, once known only in family circles and the African grocery where I did side accounting, was now splashed across major outlets. "The woman with the hidden fortune," one headline read. "Humiliated wife emerges as gold queen," said another. I kept my head low, refusing interviews, but silence did not shield me. My phone buzzed constantly. Investment offers, distant relatives, strangers begging for help. Some messages praised me. Others accused me of arrogance, but threaded among them were warnings, anonymous numbers sending chilling notes. Gold attracts envy. Watch your back. I knew Jordan's fingerprints were somewhere in this. One evening, I met with my lawyer and Auntie Ruth in her cozy kitchen. The smell of pepper soup lingered, warm and grounding, as the three of us sat around the wooden table. "He's desperate," my lawyer said flatly, shuffling through papers. "The lawsuits are real, Maya. He's drowning. I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to come after you legally, even though he signed away all rights." "He won't just come after her legally," Auntie Ruth cut in, her bangles clinking as she stirred her tea. "Men who lose pride don't fight fair. They claw, they bite. He will try to destroy what he cannot control." I leaned back, pressing my palms together. He already threatened me. At the hotel. He said I'd regret leaving him with nothing. Silence fell heavy across the table. My lawyer's brow furrowed. Auntie Ruth shook her head. "That boy is playing with fire," she muttered. "And fire doesn't know the difference between hand and house." 2 nights later, my fear proved right. I was returning from a meeting with the bullion firm when headlights flared behind my car. Too close, too aggressive. My driver cursed under his breath as the SUV swerved, trying to force us off the road. Horns blared. My chest seized with panic. "Who is that?" I shouted, gripping the seat. But before I could get an answer, the SUV cut in front of us, brakes screeching. Tires screamed against asphalt. My driver swerved hard, barely avoiding a crash. When the SUV finally sped off into the night, I caught a glimpse of the plates, covered with mud. Whoever it was, they didn't want to be traced. My hands shook as we drove on, but deep in my bones I already knew. Desperation had a driver's seat, and his name was Jordan. The next morning, photos surfaced online. Grainy shots of me outside the bullion office, captioned with lies. "Maya secretly launders gold money. Community questions Cole's ethics." The smear campaign had begun. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart pounding. Auntie Ruth touched my shoulder gently. "This is only the beginning," she warned. "He is trying to turn envy into a weapon." I clenched my fists. For years I had hidden my strength, but now the world knew, and so did my enemies. I would need to stand taller than ever before, not just for me, but for the legacy my grandmother entrusted to me. As I sat there, a new thought burned in my chest. This isn't just about Jordan anymore. It's about everyone who thinks a woman cannot carry power without breaking, and for them, I would not break. Audience engagement prompt. What would you have done if you were in my shoes, faced with a bitter ex-husband trying to ruin your name and powerful enemies circling your new fortune? Would you fight back publicly, or stay quiet and let your actions speak for you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget, tell us where you're watching from. Your voice matters here. The The smear campaign spread faster than dry season fire. By the end of the week, blogs, podcasts, and gossip channels ran Jordan's version of the story. Maya betrayed me. Maya tricked me. Maya turned her back on love for money. He painted himself as the wounded husband, the victim of a scheming wife who had hidden a fortune while he struggled to provide. But lies don't stay pretty for long. Behind his polished words, the lawsuits grew teeth. Investors he'd scammed in half-baked ventures came forward. A fitness supplier claimed unpaid debts. Even a landlord filed eviction papers for one of his business apartments. Yet still, Jordan shouted louder. And then one evening, the danger that had been lurking in shadows stepped into my light. It was close to midnight. I was at Auntie Ruth's house going over mining updates with Kojo on a video call. His voice was calm, but his news was heavy. "Madam," he said, "production is strong, but we've noticed men we don't recognize near the ridge. Watching, waiting. They don't belong to our crew. I've already spoken to security, but you should be aware. Gold brings strangers." Before I could respond, a loud bang rattled the gate outside Auntie Ruth's compound. My heart leapt. Auntie Ruth rushed to the window, her bangles jingling in alarm. Another bang followed, louder, closer. "Maya," she whispered. "They've come." Kojo's voice shouted through the computer. "Get safe. Do not open the gate for anyone." I grabbed the folder of documents, clutching them against my chest. My mind raced. Was it thieves, or worse, Jordan's doing? The banging stopped, replaced by voices, male voices, low and threatening. "Bring out the woman with the gold," one growled. Auntie Ruth clasped her hands, praying under her breath. My pulse thundered in my ears. I thought of my grandmother's warning, "Gold is fire. If you carry it, you must be ready to fight the shadows it attracts." Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Whoever the men were, they scattered before the flashing lights reached the compound. Tires screeched, and then there was silence again, only silence heavy with threat. When the officers arrived, they confirmed what I already feared. "This wasn't random," one said grimly. "Someone sent them. Someone who wants to scare you, or worse." And in my gut, I knew who that someone was. The next morning, Jordan posted a smug video. He wore a new suit, though his eyes were restless. "You see," he told his viewers, "this is what happens when greed gets out of hand. Now she's attracting criminals, violence, chaos. She thinks she can handle millions. She can't even keep herself safe. I'm the only one who ever protected her." The comments flooded in. Some called him pathetic. Others believed his lies. But all I felt was cold resolve. That night, I called a press conference. Not to defend myself, not to fight with words, but to draw a line. Standing before flashing cameras, I wore the same simple Ankara dress my grandmother once gave me. Behind me stood Auntie Ruth, Kojo on video link, and representatives from the Ajani Community Fund. "My name is Maya Cole," I began, my voice steady. "And yes, I own Ajani Ridge Gold. But this fortune is not just mine. A portion belongs to the community where the gold is found. It will build schools. It will build clinics. It will put roofs over children's heads. That is my promise." Murmurs rippled through the reporters. I held up the signed covenant Auntie Ruth had insisted I write months ago. "Every royalty disbursement will first serve the community before it serves me. My grandmother taught me that wealth without legacy is a curse." I let the words sink in. Cameras flashed, pens scratched against paper, and then I added, "As for those who try to destroy me, know this. You cannot bury someone whose roots are deep. You can try to smear me, frighten me, even silence me. But you will fail because my story is no longer just mine. It belongs to every woman told she is too small, every family told they cannot dream." The room erupted in applause, but even as the clapping swelled, my eyes caught a figure at the very back of the hall. Jordan. His jaw clenched, his eyes burning holes through me. He didn't clap, he didn't move. He just stared, a storm barely contained. I knew then, this battle was far from over, because a desperate man with nothing left to lose is more dangerous than an enemy with everything to gain. The storm came sooner than I expected. 3 nights after the press conference, I was returning from a late strategy meeting with the bullion team. The city was quiet, Atlanta's skyline glowing faintly against the night. My driver slowed as we approached my hotel. Then, out of the shadows, a car swerved violently into our path. Brakes screeched, horns blared. Before I could scream, armed men jumped out, masks covering their faces. One pointed directly at me. "Out of the car!" My driver froze, but I moved quickly, clutching the folder of documents to my chest. If they wanted me, they wouldn't get the mine, not the legacy. Just as the masked man yanked the door, a second vehicle roared into the lot, police cruisers, lights flashing. The attackers scattered like roaches in daylight. 2 were caught, the others fled. My body trembled, but my spirit burned hotter than fear, because one of the men caught pulled his mask off during the scuffle. His face was familiar, too familiar. It was one of Jordan's business partners. The police questioned him. Under the heat of their flashlights and the weight of his own panic, he confessed Jordan had arranged the attack. He wanted the gold documents stolen, leverage to force me into giving him a share. The officers promised to track Jordan down immediately, but even before they left, I knew where I would find him. The Magnolia Grand. The same ballroom where my humiliation had been staged weeks before now stood dim and empty, save for the faint glow of chandeliers left on for cleaning staff. And there he was, Jordan, standing in the middle of the floor, bottle in hand, suit wrinkled, eyes wild. "You think you've beaten me," he slurred. "You think this is your story now. But without me, you wouldn't have anything. I made you." I stepped closer, my heels echoing against the marble. "No, Jordan. You broke me and I made myself again, stronger, wiser, without you," he sneered. "And now? You're going to take everything and leave me with nothing?" I held up the folder, the signed separation papers inside. "No, Jordan. I'm leaving you with exactly what you earned. Your debts, your lies, your shame. Nothing more, nothing less." For a moment, rage twisted his face. I thought he might lunge, but then the doors burst open. Police officers swarmed in, weapons drawn. One officer's voice rang out, "Jordan Cole, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit theft and endangerment." Jordan's bottle slipped from his hand, shattering on the ballroom floor. His shoulders sagged as the cuffs clicked around his wrists. "Maya," he shouted as they dragged him out, "you'll regret this. You hear me? You'll regret it." I didn't flinch, because I knew his threats no longer had power. Weeks later, the world had moved on, but my life had transformed. The Ajani Community Fund broke ground on its first school. Children in Obuasi sang songs under the bright Ghanaian sun, their laughter sweeter than any profit margin. In Atlanta, young women messaged me, saying they finally believed they could rise above humiliation, above doubt. As for Jordan, the courts handled him. His lawsuits devoured what little he had left. His name became a cautionary tale whispered at parties where people measured wealth by appearances. One evening, sitting on Auntie Ruth's porch, she turned to me, her eyes soft. "You have carried your grandmother's lesson well, child. Gold respects quiet, but dignity respects courage. You held both." I smiled, the sound of children playing in the distance. "I only did what I had to do." She squeezed my hand, and in doing it, you taught others what they can do too. I looked up at the night sky, the stars scattered like flecks of gold across black velvet. The mine was real, the money was real, but the true treasure was something no one could ever strip away. My dignity, my voice, and my story. Because in the end, this wasn't just about a gold mine. It was about a woman who refused to be mocked into silence, and that was worth more than $700 million.